This week on the Inside Athletic Training Podcast, we welcome in Nick Paparesta, the head athletic trainer for the Minnesota Twins. Enjoy the show. All right, Nick, welcome to the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. I'm very excited to have you on for episode number 96 today. You've spent a ton of time in professional baseball, now currently the head athletic trainer with the Minnesota Twins, but a ton of experience in Oakland and Tampa Bay and other spots. We'll get into your career and all that information soon. But walk us through a bit to start, a bit about you, how your journey began in baseball, and kind of what originally drew you to athletic training.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sam, for having me on. I appreciate it. I've had an opportunity to listen to quite a few, and I'm glad we were able to kind of sync up to get this going. The journey started probably before most of your listeners were born in 90s. I was a senior in high school. My baseball career had ended due to my poor ability to play baseball, and a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, I think I'm going to do this, like these trainer people for the football team. What do you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's cool. I'll run out there with the water bottles in between the timeouts and stuff and kind of see how that works out." And then it kind of morphed into like taping ankles. And then that same friend was like, "Hey, I'm going to go to this Division III school called Baldwin-Wallace College and thinking about doing athletic training there. What do you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll visit it with you," and really liked it. And so then both of us went to school there. 2 days of football started. So we were working football camp. He left about a week into school and I stayed on, and then just kind of found a passion for athletic training through that. It was the old school internship program where you did 1,500 hours or 15,000. I can't remember. And I did the football team, took care of the baseball team, went on spring break with them every year by myself as a student athletic trainer. And then a few guys had graduated. Danny DeVoe and Rick Jamison had graduated from Baldwin-Wallace and gone on to work with the Cleveland Indians. And I was like, "Oh, that sounds like a cool thing." Like school, quite honestly, isn't like my passion by any stretch of the imagination. So like I wasn't thinking about a master's degree, and I just was kind of going to get into athletic training at some level. And I was like, "Hey, I'll give that a shot." And so then sent out, like the standard back in the day, typed out 30 resumes, or actually 28 probably, and sent them out to everybody. And Cleveland got back to me. We did an interview. They called and said, "You didn't get the job." And then 2 weeks later called and said, "The guy we wanted to hire doesn't want the job. Do you still want it?" And so I had the opportunity in 1994 to leave college early because we were on quarters. I went to work with the Cleveland Indians that first year in Watertown, New York, out of Winter Haven, Florida, and then went back to college in the fall and finished up school. So, and then I stayed with Cleveland for 11 years. I got out for a year and worked at NovaCare Rehabilitation to really tighten up my rehabilitation skill set for a year. And then Tampa Bay Rays had called, asked me to come over there. I worked for 2 years as a minor league coordinator and rehab specialist for both Major League, Minor League. And then I did 3 years in the big leagues as an assistant athletic trainer, second assistant, and then went to Oakland for 12 years as the head, had the opportunity there to grow, and then I've now been with Cleveland for the last 3 years with the Twins as the last 3 years as the head athletic trainer too here.
Yeah, ton of experience there. As we all know, it's not a linear straight line. Going to be bouncing all over the place, but you've held roles with some significant roles with a number of different clubs. Kind of looking back at your starting point, a lot of our listeners are younger athletic trainers or people in school looking to, one day be in your position. When you broke in with the Indians, maybe even that first year while you're still a college student, were there any lessons that really stood out? I'm sure you learned so much, but was there any one thing that, kind of opened your eyes to what it meant to be an athletic trainer in a professional setting like baseball?
Yeah, I think that I had the opportunity with Cleveland to spend 5 years kind of in what they call the extended spring training program. So I was in Winter Haven, Florida for 6 months, and then would go to Watertown, New York for 3 months with the newly drafted players. And having an understanding of, at the age of 21 years old, how to basically care for other individuals your age, or even younger than you, and how to like just introduce them to the role of professional baseball as I was being introduced into the role of professional baseball, and just being there to be a support for them. That was first and foremost the most important part of that. Teddy Blackwell, who works for the Cleveland Guardians still, and a gentleman by the name of David Lassiter, really taught me those traits early on. Was that we're there for the players. Like the players, if the players are not part of your thought process on an everyday aspect, then you're not doing the job, because without players, we don't have a job, is the reality of it. There's no game, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a big part of just understanding the value and the necessity to be part of the group and really try to do what I can for the players. The players came first.
Yeah. And you talked about, again, your time in Cleveland coming up. I'm always interested in knowing you guys, the athletic training trees and the people who have come from different spots. Lonnie Soloff, veteran in the game from the Indians, Nick Kenny with the Royals now, PBAT's president, and a number of different people come from the athletic training trees that you've been a part of. Talk about what it's like kind of seeing, you're a veteran now. You've been around the game for so long. What's it like kind of growing up in the game and seeing your, people you were just starting with kind of be in leadership roles and head jobs? And what does that mean to kind of where you guys started together?
Yeah, it's funny. I am probably one of the lucky ones that's had an opportunity to kind of fall from a bunch of different branches from a bunch of different tree sources, both the Cleveland source, the Tampa Bay source, and hopefully now the Oakland, the tree as well, as it continues to grow. It's just it's gratifying, right? It's something that when you look back on, you see the guys like Jeff Desjardins, who we hired in Cleveland when I was there, and Chad Wolf, and then the guy at Brad LaRosa out in Florida, and Nate Brooks and Jeff Collins, Brian Schulman, the group there. It all starts though with me, with Jimmy Warfield, and Paul Spacuzza. Jimmy Warfield, the person who, one of our scholarship funds is named after, who is, you've never heard a bad thing said about him in any clubhouse, both visiting home, player, staff member that's been around him. And then having the opportunity to kind of follow under him and spend time with him before he passed away. It's fun. It's great. It's endearing. And it also extends to the strength conditioning group as well. Like seeing so many strength conditioning coaches that I've worked with over the years that have gone on to be directors and head strength conditioning coaches at major league levels. It's something that I really relish more than anything else, honestly.
And within the organizations, when you move from, say, Tampa Bay to Oakland to Minnesota, cultures are all different. Organizations are all extremely different. People do things different ways, philosophies, all that. You've held head roles with the A's and the Twins. How do you approach coming into a new organization, like a couple years ago with the Twins, and making things how you want them, doing things your way, but also respecting the current culture and the current people that are there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing right away is to just go in and bulldoze everything that's been done previously. No, I'm just kidding. You have to go in with a bit of a tippy-toe approach, right? Like you can't be a bull in a china closet. And I had the opportunity in Oakland with a group of front office individuals and medical staff and strength conditioning staff that were like younger and very small, tight knit group. And so we had the opportunity to really kind of grow this thing the way we wanted to and blossom it out. And I had taken a lot of the things that I had learned in Tampa with Ron and Paul Harker, and then even previously with Cleveland, but more Ron and Paul Harker, because I worked together with them at the major league level. And I was like the monkey in the middle between the two desks. So I would listen to them talk to each other through me. And so I really was able to like soak a lot of what they had in. And so I was able to take those things I really enjoyed and bring them to Oakland, and then take that and expand that over 12 years and bring in Brian Schulman, who had never been in the minor leagues before, and really kind of just teach him like a little bit of feel for baseball and what that meant, but then take some ideas he had. And Walt Horn, who had been in the minor leagues for so long and then went to the big league level at the first time, and just soak up the gratitude or soak up the enjoyment of being in the big leagues finally with him, and learn from him and see what he can do. And then took it to Minnesota. And I think the other thing too I learned in Oakland, now that I go back a little bit, is like it was a very small place, meaning structurally small environment. small clubhouse, small training room, and you had to learn to do with what you didn't have the most with. You had to make the best out of the smallest situations. And so like learning how to do that was great for me. And then I came to Minnesota and it's like, they've got 15 coaches and two athletic trainers with me, plus a physical therapist and 2 major league strength coaches and all of these analytics. And I was just like, poof, I just had to figure out everyone's name and what they did for a living and then try to figure out how I wanted to bring that same process and philosophy over from Oakland. And once it came in, you just learn what your medical staff group likes to do and not do. Like there's certain things Jason and Masa like to do that I really could care less about. And there's things that, Jeff and Walt and Brian like to do that I didn't worry about in Oakland. And so I just allow them to be who they are and then just try to work my system into that process with them. And just kind of let them know, like, this is how we want to do things from the start to finish. And then, they kind of usually just get what I've seen so far is they just kind of gather around that. And then they grow off of that, which is kind of the easiest way to kind of process it.
Yeah, and you mentioned Walt Horn, who I remember meeting him a handful of years ago. His gratitude and appreciation for the big leagues was unlike anything I've ever seen after, I don't know, 2 or 3 decades in the minor leagues. Yeah. I mean, he was one of the nicest guys in the game. Well, Nick, around that, theme of fitting in, but also leading, you've obviously done a great job as twice you were part of Big League Staff of the Year award winners, given out by PBATS each year. I know you're not in it for your recognition. You guys you serve people for a living. You help people. That's the nature of all you guys and men and women out there who do this. But what does it mean to be honored for 2 different clubs as Big League Staff of the Year in Major League Baseball?
I think that I don't think about it very much, to be honest with you. I try not to. I'm not a big pat on the back type of guy. Mm-hmm. I would say that the award is amazing. Don't get me wrong. It's something that it's in my office. It's something that I look at in the off season and strive to continue to head towards and lean into as much as possible. But it's definitely not something that once the season starts, it's even in the forefront or even back of your mind, honestly. I would say that the majority of that is based, the staff that I have around me is what I think allows myself and others within our group to do the job we can efficiently and effectively. And I think that allows us to basically be there for whatever anybody needs from the visiting side, really. I think that all in all, it's not about us just caring for our players. It's also about us caring for the visiting sides, athletic trainers, the medical staff, the coaches staff, the front office, and the players that are over there. So I think that's what's most important to us is helping them out in any way, shape, or form. Some people may say, oh, well, you're taking a competitive advantage away from yourself. And I think that that's a bit, kind of disgusting to say. Yeah. And it's nothing that I think that is in the forefront of anything we do. I allow my staff to do everything they can do. And I just really just get the heck out of their way when it's all said and done. It's definitely not, I have not been, lucky enough to win the award or been part of 2 groups that have won it because of my sparkling personality. I think everybody in this game that knows me will tell you that. I'm a people person who doesn't really like people. So it's just kind of the reality of the circumstances. I've just been very fortunate. I'm very proud of it. But it's definitely not something I try to think too much about.
Yeah. And I want to kind of shift gears a bit and talk about, you've mentored and managed many athletic trainers over the year who have gone on to do great things and, moved into leadership roles themselves. When you have, really talented young athletic trainers, like even many of our listeners out there, how do you go about leading them and getting the best out of the people working with you? Are there any key leadership areas that you think are important, throwing people in the fire, getting them prepared? What do you kind of do as an individual to make sure that the people under you are growing, improving, and, ideally one day, finding a head job somewhere?
Yeah, I think that it's a fine line nowadays, right? So in Oakland, we had a subset of minor league athletic trainers that were at every affiliate. And then I came over to Minnesota and we actually have 2 at every affiliate here, which is an amazing asset for our coaches and for our players. But then it's also double the amount of people that you have to basically try to help, right? Or try to help grow or keep an eye on or whatever that may be. And the one thing that we try to do is we bring everyone through the major league side in spring training. We bring all of our coordinators and all of our minor league athletic trainers through the major league side. And my biggest thing is, like, I lead by example, right? Like, I was taught a long time ago in Cleveland by a gentleman by the name of Boyd Coffey, who was our farm director, our field coordinator. And his motto was, if you're 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late. And the thing is you have to be there. You have to be prepared. You have to be ready for that day's of activity. And that starts from the day before, thinking about things at the end of the day of how you're going to do it the next day. And the one thing I just try to really share with our young athletic trainers is that you need to be prepared. And that preparation needs to be done the day before, because when you show up that next day, you may have 3 coaches get sick, or 2 players call you in the middle of the night that have something going on, or their family member, or God forbid something happen with your own family member. So being prepared, and as prepared as possible for the next day, for me, is one of the biggest things that I try to share with all of our group that we have.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've heard that from a number of different men and women across the league. A lot of people I talk to on the show, Nick, they talk about kind of the feel an athletic trainer has to have for the environment they operate in. Those soft skills, you might say. When you get new people in the door, whether it's interns or first year, people in the big leagues or anything for that matter, is that something you notice, people's feel for the training room, building trust with players, and how do you kind of impart knowledge with those people that's an important skill set to have?
Yeah, I think that ultimately I have to be the biggest, I guess, mirror of that. Like, I have to show to my staff, our strength and conditioning staff, and even our physicians, that, like, I have or can establish a relationship in some level, whether it be a huge piece of our relationship or small piece of our relationship with each player individually. You have to find one thing that kind of allows you to kind of softly work yourself into their life a little bit. You have to determine what that is. And sometimes with the younger kids, it takes a little bit longer because they're a little bit more standoffish, and they're a little bit, they don't know if they belong yet. They don't even know if they're supposed to be in the big leagues yet. They're trying to, figure out how to perform. And then with the older guys, they may have their own people that they do stuff with, which I think is great. But sooner or later, you have to find a way to work with each and every individual player and have some type of relationship. It doesn't mean that you're friends with any of those players by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that that's something that is a little bit lost still right now, currently, because there's such a close age group now with a lot of guys and girls. But I think it's important to just know that, to let them know and have them understand that you're there for them, both mentally and physically, and you're there for their family, but you're not their friend. And keeping it at a professional level, I think, is always kind of the easiest route for me with that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And kind of looking back on your career, but also thinking about the leadership that you've imparted in the game, is there any kind of advice or a lesson that, let's say, you received early in your career that still to this day you're imparting on the people working for you in Minnesota?
Yeah, I go by a kind of a motto of I don't truly believe in evidence-based practice, but I believe in practicing evidence-based training technology and training theories. Meaning I don't have to believe in everything that the evidence information tells me that has to work specifically for that individual player. Every player, every injury, every nuance is a little bit different, but everything that I'm doing is evidence practiced or based in evidence information. Sure. And so it doesn't have to be exactly the way that the literature says it has to be. It doesn't have to go the way that is, but you should use the literature and the evidence in every decision you're making. But you have to have the ability to be able to be flexible and adjustable. And if you're not flexible to the environment or the circumstance you're in, then you're going to get rigid and things are probably going to get missed.
Yeah. And that's a kind of a good segue into my next topic. Athletic training has changed so much, I'm sure, definitely since you've been in the game, but even for people who are new to the game a couple of years ago, innovations and change happens so frequently in sports medicine and athletic training. Has there been a major shift that you can remember in your career and how you do your job? Since you started, has there been something that, really kind of blew your mind in terms of changes how athletic trainers operate? Could be data you have, technology, staff sizes. What's been like the biggest change you've seen over the course of your career?
Yeah, I think that, it's been a long time. So there's been some like I'd say like era changes, right?
Yeah.
Each 10 years or so, or whatever that might be. I think, very early on it was ice, stim, a little bit of stretching here and there. Don't lift a lot of heavy weights. You're going to get too stiff, blah, blah, blah. And then it's kind of morphed into like movement and making sure that the movements are clean, and then soft tissue work and understanding that it's better to have the tissue a little bit powerful than having it stiff and rigid. And I think that all of those things, I guess all old things always seem to come back at some point in time, and then you find the modalities are back into trend, and it's kind of just making this big circle. It's all cyclical in the end, right? But I think that like the one thing that's kind of blown me away the most is like how fast these kids can become better performers, how fast they can change their body to become a harder thrower or more spin rate or whatever that may be that they're looking for, or more extension. And now our ability to be able to track that on an every throw basis, to me is, I think, what's currently changing very quickly in our environment. And I think something that's going to continue to change very quickly in our environment. I think that we as practitioners are still trying to play catch up a little bit right now to what they've been able to do from a sheer movement, a sheer strength, and a sheer ability to basically bump up their performance as well as quickly as they have recently.
And do you find, with all the new tracking, new data, new analytics being introduced every year, every week, every day, probably, so much being thrown at you guys as practitioners, do you find it's difficult to decipher which programs, which analytics you want to implement, you want to pay attention to? How do you find the, innovations with the most value and actually put those into practice?
Yeah, it's definitely a learning process, right? So way back in the Oakland days when Rapsodo first came out to where we are now with TrackMan Mobile, I think it's been an amazing, 10 to 12 years or what that's been.
Yeah.
I think the most advantageous part of the data and analyst for us is be able to use it as early warning signs of potential injury occurrence and or fatigue, specifically for pitchers, specifically for starting pitchers. And we use a ton of our data analysts for returning pitchers and players back to their previous level of competition. We use a lot of it, on an every single day basis of our workload management, of our acute to chronic work ratio, of our pitchers returning back into the bullpens, into live BPs and into game competition. And I would say on a daily basis, it's something we speak about as a group: strength conditioning, physical therapy, medical, and analyst. It's now one big conglomerate group, where before it was like, oh, the pitching coaches are over there doing their thing, and the analysts may be doing their thing and coming up with ideas and theories and how we should change this pitcher, and then the medical was on their side, and the strength conditioning always kind of worked together, but they were different from the rest of the group. And I think now it's really focusing and honing in on organizations. The organizations that do it well do it together. They all do it together. While they all may have their own different groups, they're still conversing and speaking on a daily basis on how to avoid the injuries, or how to get them back quicker and healthy, and or how to just keep a tab on the guys that are healthy.
And, you mentioned a couple of times, I've always admired the respect you have for your coworkers, whether it's physical therapists, strength coaches, data analysts. Everyone's part of your team. Nobody's bigger than the other person. You've always made that very clear at all your stops. With that said, with so many people gathering so many different data points and different pieces of information and coming to the table with that, ultimately it falls on you and a few other people to make those decisions. Is it difficult to take all that in and then, kind of put people in the right place where ultimately it's going to be your decision of what happens? But has it made managing the sports medicine staff more difficult on your end?
So that's a good question. I would say it this way. When I was in Tampa, I had a farm director by the name of Mitch Lukovitz, and I was the coordinator, the minor league medical coordinator. I was also doing the rehabs on the major minor league side. Yeah. And Mitch Lukovitz only wanted to talk to one person about anything that was going on with the 200 players below him. And so I was always the conduit of all information, whether it's coming from AAA, AA, A-ball, rookie level, rehabs. Everything had to funnel through me. So then I would just talk to Mitch about it. So it really was like an educational process for me. And it was a way for me to really understand and handle all of that information input and being able to give it back out. So then that kind of really trained me when I went to the major league level, then to work with Ron and Paul to take in what they had. And then when I went to Oakland, it was easy for me then to be the one voice to the front office or the manager or the coaches, because I had already learned that when I was with Tampa on the minor league side, which it can be difficult, right? Like you're taking in 12 people's opinions and information, but when they only want to hear it from one voice, you are, kind of laying it all out there for yourself and you're putting yourself on the line. But the reality is you're making informed decisions because of the people that are giving you the information are good at what they do.
Mm-hmm. And to dive deeper into that, on a day in, day out basis, there could be so many people you're communicating with, from team physicians to strength coaches, physical therapists, front office, the business aspect of things. We have the draft and combine. There's so much going on all year for you. How do you ensure that communication is consistent and people kind of above are getting what they need from you?
I think that a lot of that has to happen in the early stages of either organization, whether it was Oakland or whether it was Minnesota when I first became the head guy. And that is a lot of like talking on the phone. It's a lot. Well, now it's all about Zoom, right? So now it's about Zoom and talking on the phone and just reiterating the importance of when I first got the job in Minnesota, the conversation was like, hey, we want you to really focus on the 40-man roster. We need to get this thing tuned in, tightened up, blah, blah, blah. And now as that had gone, a couple of years into that, now they're like, hey, we want you to kind of now be a little bit more involved in our higher priority guys. And then we want you to be a little bit more involved in the draft and this. And so those things, in my opinion, always evolve as you evolve as a head athletic trainer within the organization that you're in. And so if you try to go into it, in my opinion, the way I handle it, I could never go into it my first year and say, I want to do everything, because you really can't. You have to figure out where you want to attack. And then once you get that fine tuned and kind of finite to where you want, then you move on to the next thing. And so for me, it was get the 40-man roster guys lined up and dialed in. Then, okay, let's talk about the higher priority minor league guys. And then let's talk about the draft. And in Oakland, it was the same type of approach. It just happened a little bit quicker because there wasn't as much time to kind of wait from year to year. And then, we had success early. So then everyone started getting all kind of giddy about it. And so then I just kind of took on everything at one point in time there. So, but I had Jeff Collins in the minor leagues, who was really the general of that fortress down there. So he was able to keep things kind of at bay a little bit for me there, which was great.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about communication at a staff level, you in Minnesota working with your team. Earlier, we spoke about your relationships within the game, not necessarily just your team members, but different clubs. You talked about competitive advantages and things like that. And obviously winning is the reason people play the game and why, you have a job and all that good stuff. But what's it like? You've worked with so many people across the league. Do you still communicate often, whether you have a question or a problem or something with people you've worked with, like, for example, Jeff Collins, Brian Shulman? Do you still, keep in touch? Do you guys talk about work stuff? What's those relationships with guys that you used to spend time every day with?
Yeah, I think that I guess we kind of talk about this sometimes with my wife and I don't have a ton of friends outside of baseball, to be quite honest with you. I have just a lot of friends in baseball, right? Yeah. Or people or colleagues. And so I do talk to them quite a bit. I talk to a number of athletic trainers, not just guys that I've worked with, but guys that were probably in the same division with me for years. And so there is always that hey, have you seen this? What do you think? Or where have you ended up with this type of injury? Or, my God, have you played a day game in Tampa this year? Woof, babe. I mean, things like that, just having those nuances of, hey, what's the new place in Cleveland look like? And just keeping those established relationships and just trying to, keep everyone grounded. And I try to just make sure everyone's doing well and that they're, keeping focused on what we need to do. And this game is going to be here when we leave. It's not the most important things in our lives. Having those relationships with all the other athletic trainers for me is something that's probably more important than actually worrying about what I do on a day-to-day basis. Those are the guys that are going to be around and have been through it together. And I could have a good relationship with my neighbor at home, but like, he really doesn't understand what I do for a living because he's not living this life. And so, it's always like, oh, you're gone all summer. And you're like, yeah, that's kind of how this works. Having to have a relationship with people that understand it and do it every day, it does make it a little bit easier to kind of walk in the shoes every day with them.
Yeah, it's definitely a small fraternity of men and women who have been through the grind. And again, what we're trying to do with this show is explore your job and what you guys do. A lot of people might think you're taping an ankle and putting some ice on, but there's so much more, obviously, that goes into that. One other relationship I'm interested to hear from you about is the relationship between athletic trainer and team physicians. We're going to be speaking with Dr. Camp, who you work with so closely, next week on the show, which is super exciting. Talk about the relationship between team physicians and athletic trainers and why it's so important to kind of the health of the player.
Yeah, I had the opportunity way back when to start with Dr. Dance in Cleveland and Dr. Kepler, and then Dr. Eaton in Tampa, who's awesome, and Dr. James Andrews, who's also part of that group. And then we had the opportunity in Oakland when I went there to really start from the ground zero with Dr. Will Workman and Dr. John Dickinson, who were able to really just come in as first-time orthopedic surgeons with a major league team. And so they started the same year I did, and so we kind of just grew together. And that relationship made me really understand the importance of having a team physician that's there for you. Dr. Pont was there, who's kind of a who amongst the group, and really help kind of mold each other's philosophies and thought process. And so coming to Minnesota, obviously with Dr. Camp and his talk circuit and his ability the research that he's done both in the game and other venues, I was just kind of excited to just get to know him as a person. I do call them all doctors because I think that level of respect needs to be given to them on an everyday basis. Dr. Camp's always like, just call me Chris. And I'm just like, you went to college for a long time. You deserve that title. And I think that the most important thing is for me to show that to him, specifically when I'm around, the guys that I work with every day. And then also the players. The players need to know that it's a level of respect that he deserves to have because he is caring for them as their team physician. I think that also the amount of time that they sacrifice for our organizations is not nearly echoed enough out to anybody. Some of them may be given stipends, but like the amount of time that they spend at our organizations, both at the major league and minor league level, helping other athletic trainers and walking hand in hand with them, and I think is not given enough recognition, honestly, within Major League Baseball. They are there for us days in and days out, good and bad. They help us make decisions. And they allow us also, though, to figure it out on our own a little bit too, and come to them if we have hard problems and questions. And as a young athletic trainer in the minor leagues, I felt like it was most important for me to learn how to do that on my own, but then have a little bit of backing with the doctor to give me the pat on the back and say, yeah, you did a good job. So that relationship for me as an athletic trainer, if it's not a good relationship with your physician, then I think ultimately it's on you as the athletic trainer. You need to look in the mirror and you need to figure out why that is. Because those people are invaluable, both on the orthopedic side and the internal medicine side.
Yeah, definitely a statement that all your colleagues across the league have echoed in terms of the importance of the team doctors and physicians. Well, Nick, I want to shift gears one last time here. I know you not too keen about in talking about yourself and your accomplishments. When you reflect on your career as an athletic trainer, like we've said, so many different stops, so much accomplished. Is there something you're most proud of, kind of professionally or even personally in the game of baseball that you've seen so far?
I guess I would say this. I am proud of the systems I've left behind. I'm proud of the organizations that I've left, and not that I'm saying they all have to say this was a Nick organization by any stretch of imagination, but just the things that I've left behind, I think that maybe they continue on with, or have allowed them to kind of feel more comfortable doing what they want to do and how they want to do it, more than any type of plaque or victory by any stretch of imagination. It's just more or less the people that I've left behind and allowed them to continue to progress. Like I felt really good about Oakland when I left there because I knew they had some amazing people that were there that could continue, that I could hand the torch to and allow them to pass it on.
Yeah, and in working with you in some capacity for almost 15 years now, and with PBATs, you can definitely see different people's stamps on different organizations and how they leave those when they move on. So it's definitely cool to hear you talk about that. And lastly, Nick, you've been doing this for a long time, a couple decades now. What keeps you passionate about athletic training? Is it, winning games, the people you work with, taking care of the players, serving an organization? Is there something that stands out that kind of keeps you going?
Yeah, I think that it's just about the relationships, right? Like I think that it is, it's the challenge of trying to build the best system possible and put the best system in possible and be able to walk away from it and know that it's going to continue to grow. And it's about the people, really. One of the questions everyone asks me about is like, are you going to miss Oakland? And I always tell them this: I'm not going to miss the cement and the concrete and the walls and the stadium itself, but I miss the people that are there. I miss the people that I spent the most time with, and really were family members for me, and still are to this day. That's kind of what keeps me going. That's what keeps me kind of on the cusp of enjoying a 5.5-hour flight from Tampa to Seattle last night, and doing this. But you can definitely sit back at times and say, man, why am I still doing this? That's for sure.
Yeah, you've been all over and definitely left your mark in a number of places, but it's surely a grind. There's no question about that. Well, Nick, to wrap up today's episode, we got to finish with a segment called Extra Bases here on the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. So I'm going to ask you 4 quick questions and we'll let you share a little bit about, your life as an athletic trainer. So we will kick it off at first base. You've been around for a long time now. Do you have a favorite athletic training room that you've worked in the big leagues?
To be honest with you, so here's a couple things on this. It's not about just the athletic training room space, to be very frank and upfront. I know a lot of people love this big space and blah, 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 and places for people to roll around on the ground and get loose and all that stuff. Yeah. And having worked in Oakland for a number of years, that's not it. For me, it's about the people. It's about the clubhouse guys. It's about the environment. It's about a lot of the things that also include the visiting, the home doctors and stuff like that. So to answer that question, one of my favorite ones is in Texas. I really enjoy the clubhouse staff that's there. Dr. Meister, whenever I can get him to come visit and just lay it all out on the line for me, is always awesome. I really do enjoy that. And I do enjoy the environment as a whole there.
Yeah, I think that's a common answer. And yours obviously not for many of the same reasons as your colleagues. Moving on to second base, you guys travel to tons of cities every year, like you mentioned earlier. Do you have a favorite city to visit when you're on the road outside of baseball purposes?
Yeah, my favorite city on the road is Chicago. There's just so much to do. You can never run out of things to do there. Even off days there are great.
Yeah, and definitely you guys are going in the summer, so you can't beat the lakeshore in Chicago there. Yeah. Moving on to third base, Nick, you guys, athletic trainers, have such a cool vantage point being in the dugout. Granted, you don't watch a game like a fan would. You're looking out for a million things. We all know that. Do you have a favorite stadium to sit in and take in a game?
Yeah, I have 2. I'm not much of what I call a rail rider. I'm not a guy that stands at the top step on the rail. I'm more of a sit back in the dugout type of guy. I like to see a better vantage point. So one of my favorite ones that's no longer around was Old Yankee Stadium. That was like my favorite place to watch a game at. Like the dugout was really low and I could see everything I want to see out. But my favorite, I think, new stadium, I think I love Citi Field in New York. I love the Mets new stadium. It's such a great place to watch a game, and the vantage points are really good. The crowd is awesome. It's probably my favorite.
Mm-hmm. And moving on to home plate, the last question for today. Looking back on your career, or maybe a new stop with a new club, or just getting into the game, did you ever have a kind of welcome to the big leagues moment when you were coming up?
You ready for this story? So it's 2004. I am in AAA I got called up in September in 03 and 04. And we are on the bus in Kansas City. We are leaving to go to Minnesota, believe it or not. I was with the Cleveland Indians at the time. We were on the bus. It's rookie hazing day, which is no longer allowed in the new CBA. So they had all the players dressed up in different costumes and stuff. And we were on bus 2, the head bus. The first bus left early with the coaches and front office and media guys. And the second bus was the rookies, the veterans, and then the trainers rode that bus too. A couple of us rode that bus. And so myself and Rick Jameson are on that bus. We're heading to the airport, and we hear a loud crash in the back of the bus. And we're like, oh, okay, someone got a little excited. They broke one of the windows on the bus, whatever, no big deal. And then about 3 minutes later, one of my players, Kyle Denny, who was a starting pitcher in Buffalo for that year with me, says, hey, Nick, come here. Nick, come here. And I was like, oh, great. This idiot probably just cut himself on some piece of glass. And he's like, I think I've just been shot. And I was like, that seems a little bit bizarre. So he's like, yeah, check out my calf. And so I was like, oh man, it is bleeding. That is weird. I wonder what happened. And so I go up front. I said, hey, Rick, you got a gauze pad or whatever. You know, Kyle got cut or something in the back there. And he's like, I really do think I just got shot. And so he unzipped his boot because he was wearing a USC cheerleader's outfit. And he had these leather boots. And I go down to touch the laceration of what I thought was a laceration. And I squeeze it. And this bullet pops out into my hand. And He actually had been shot. I was 2 seats up to the left of him, so it could have come underneath me. We had a bullet come into the bus, went through across to the other side of the bus, and it actually shot him in the leg. And his boot, because it was leather, really slowed the bullet down enough to where it didn't go in and out of him. It just went in him, and then I was able to pull the bullet out. And so we obviously pulled the bus over, called ahead. They had an ambulance waiting at the airport. He stayed overnight with Rick in Kansas City. We went on to Minnesota. So that was that's my story for you about that. It is a true story. You can look it up. It's real. It did happen in 2004. So yeah,
I think it's safe to say that will be the most crazy story we hear on this podcast for the eternity of it. That's absolutely insane. And lucky for rookie hazing wearing those boots, man. That's
exactly.
That's
he was able to continue his career for sure. Yeah, no doubt.
That's insane. Well, Nick, I appreciate that story first of all, and all the info you shared with us today on the podcast. I know you're extremely busy and got to get over to the stadium, but we wish you and everybody in Minnesota the best of luck as the season progresses.
Thank you very much, Sam. Again, I truly appreciate the time. I'm glad we can get this done.
Thank you for listening to the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. For more information about PBATS and athletic training, visit pbats.com. See you next time.